Tyra Steele and Jasper Troy are your first LFG winners and are now contracted to NXT. We're going to talk about that and, of course, a lot more. This is WrstlXtra. Yo, this is a WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Always joined by my tag team partner. Say his name, he shall appear. The omnipresent man that is Gerard Bonner. Let's get straight into this one. LFG concluded on Sunday. 16 weeks of, I believe it was 16 competitors as well. All part of the Performance Center, all basically fighting for a chance to get the contract, an NXT contract. We saw so much potential in so many stars, so many twists and turns, injuries, arguments, all sorts of different things. But we came away with the contract winners, Jasper Troy for the men from Team Booker T, and Tyra Steele from Team Undertaker. Before we get into those two specifically, and how we feel about them winning or their journey or the rest of it, give me your synopsis or your run through of how you consumed this new entity that is LFG.
I love the way you asked that question, because with so much wrestling content these days, you do have to kind of have a game plan in terms of how you're going to consume it. And so for me, I often watched on demand. I have it on DVR, so I would watch either later that evening or the next day. The show concept itself, I thought, was brilliant. I mean, I think it's kind of like a Tough Enough meets The Voice kind of situation. And it certainly was an elevated or an evolved, dare I say, version of Tough Enough for those who remember the Tough Enough days. And I love what they did with this show. The idea of having 4 coaches who are, all basically Hall of Fame talents, legends in the business, sharing their expertise, and then putting it in a team format where they're competing for points, and then getting down to the playoffs over the last few weeks. I thought the show was put together magnificently. It was a brilliant concept that was executed very well. What's different about, obviously, LFG versus Tough Enough is with Tough Enough, of course, this predated the Performance Center. So you were dealing with, for the most part, people who had never wrestled before. In this case, you're dealing with basically standouts from the Performance Center who had not made it onto NXT. I can't say they hadn't made it onto television, period, because some of them have been involved with Level Up, or some other iteration, but didn't quite make it to the NXT roster. So I loved this show. It allowed you to see the personalities of the people that were involved. You could kind of figure out who you connected to, whose story made the most sense to you, and who you were pulling for. So I thought LFG was brilliant. I enjoyed it an awful lot, and I'm looking forward to season 2, which is coming very soon.
Yeah, very, very soon. One of the things that I loved, as you said, it was a mixed match of so many different things. It's like Tough Enough meets The Voice, meets the concept of going from being in a group to then going into playoffs. Very most sport that we watch, and especially with the American sports, a lot of them kind of go that way as well. And I thought that was just brilliant. The other part of it that I absolutely loved was it kind of it mixed the reality, or it kind of gave us even more insight into the reality of the wrestling business, because it wasn't just simply a tournament and whoever wins the match goes into the next round. It wasn't. They kept on saying it wasn't about wins and losses, and I think that was perfect. Obviously, given you know, the types of people that were in it or the stage that they're at in terms of their careers and stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't about winning. It was about how you connect with the audience, how you got through your match, how you performed in your match, whether you're on the losing side or, you know, or the winner, how you took care of your, you know, your opponent in the ring. All of these things that are so essential to the wrestling business and coming up in that space. You know, the great thing about it as well, as you said, you mentioned personalities. There were so many different people, and they were at very different stages in their performance center careers, I guess.
Sure.
You want to put it like that. You know, you had a few guys that had only been there literally 2 weeks before.
Right.
Some of them have been there, you know, probably almost a year, 6 months or whatever it is. But they still had to get the job done.
Yeah.
In your mind, who stood out for you in the early going that you thought probably left a little too early, or, you know, kind of showed up as you expected them to? Like, kind of give me a few names that kind of stood out and you know, throughout the process.
You know, one of the early standouts for me was P Nasty, Panina Tuilepa. She had, you know, what you look at in these kinds of spaces is who's bringing something to the dance that isn't currently there. And there really is not another woman on the WWE roster like her. Some might think because of the Samoan connection that you would mention a Nia Jax, but Nia Jax is a larger figure. She's towering over people. So she's kind of got that giant thing happening. But P Nasty is definitely that rough and rugged kind of wrestler that you don't really see shown an awful lot on the women's side. You know, the women's side tends to really go for strong aesthetic, not necessarily over athleticism, but more aesthetic versus attitude. And I think in this space, P Nasty, her attitude was one that you were like, ooh, like I could rock with that. Another one, of course, on the women's side was Bailey Humphrey.
Yes.
Her
very different.
Her whole makeup was different. Her body type was so different that you could not look away. Like, you were just looking at this like, whoa. And then she had figured out how to harness that and how to turn it into some great moves. And I think had she had more experience, she would have definitely lasted longer, I think, in that competition. On the men's side, you got to talk about the son of Evander Holyfield, who I think his look alone, his name alone, I mean, I would not be surprised to see him show up in WWE very, very soon, because it's clear that he gets it. I like how they didn't try to turn him into something that he wasn't. You're the son of a championship boxer, so let's see that come out, you know? And we got to see that. I think, again, if he had a bit more on the seasoning side of things, he would have been fun to watch. And then the other one who kind of was a standout from the start, but didn't quite make it as far as I thought, was Anthony Luke. He was a guy who, you know, Booker T kind of labeled as, okay, he's going to be kind of that guy to pay attention to. The challenge that he had, I think, was aesthetically and in terms of his attitude, he resembled The Rock too much. And the problem that you have with that is, I think about a Ricky Starks or a Ricky Saints, right? How he had to work through that piece where everybody kind of kept calling him Little Rock to really establish himself. So we knew, no, this is Ricky Saints. Don't be fooled by the similarities. And I think Anthony Luke needed more time to be able to show what differences he had between him and The Rock. So those were some of my standouts from the early going.
I mean, for me, I think I would name all of those as well from that first week or so. But you also in the aesthetic, in what I saw as potential, especially with that first week or two. Troy Yearwood was one.
Yes.
My God,
Yes.
the whole look,
Yes.
everything, his abilities, all of that. But again, you know, a lot of these guys, I think almost every single one of them had no wrestling experience before being at the Performance Center.
Right.
So it kind of showed when it came down to actually being in the ring. Yes, the aesthetic was great. Yes, the athleticism and, you know, the potential abilities is there. But then there's all this other stuff that you have to work on that people don't really realize how important it is. And
Absolutely.
I think Troy Yearwood kind of, you know, magnified that whole thing. And there were so many others. I think all of them just had something to them where you're thinking, okay, they could be someone. The potential is there. A lot of the ladies, as well as the men, did great things. One of the beauties of this whole competition for me was, especially when we got to that playoff stage, when they were getting rid of people and stuff like that, it wasn't a goodbye, you'll never make it type of scenario.
Right.
It was just, your time isn't just yet.
Right.
Let's put you to one side. We'll work on you a little bit longer. We'll maybe see you down the road. It's only the start. Whereas with other things that we've seen, and we can talk, you know, you mentioned The Voice and, you know, other shows like that. You don't really see anyone again unless they kind of reach maybe the top 2, top 3, something like that.
Yeah.
But then even with that, it's not always the person who wins that is the most successful.
Absolutely.
So there's still so much space and doors that can be opened for all of these other people that were in the competition. Let's get down to the winners themselves.
Yeah.
Let's first talk about Jasper Troy. Jasper Troy, this big, massive, towering figure. You know, we heard it so many times from Booker T and everyone else calling him a monster.
Yeah, the monster.
The monster that was Jasper Troy. His whole aesthetic, his whole demeanor. And this is one thing I would say, like the whole demeanor, the whole aesthetic was something that we don't see from Black wrestlers.
Correct.
And I think for me, when he didn't stand out straight away, in size maybe, but he, you know, in his attitude and his abilities, what he did in the ring, didn't really stand out straight away. But as the competition kept on going, you're like, that's the guy.
Yeah.
That is the guy. As well as the runner-up that was Shiloh Hill, I thought he was amazing for me. They talked about him having layers and, you know, being able to do different things, but I think in a way as well that was probably his, you know, a negative in terms of not knowing what to do with him, where to put him, and stuff like that.
Right.
Jasper Troy, however, you just knew it was set. He's going to be this guy. He's going to be like that, and he stayed that way throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on his journey? How did you see his journey? And do you feel as though he was the rightful winner?
I loved his journey because I think what you saw in there is his true passion for the business. I think that was really what, in my opinion, won him over. It's what led him to do all of the things that he did. It led him to perform the way he performed in the ring. It inspired and infused his promos and informed his promos. It was great to see. And I think his passion for this business is what's going to give him an edge really once he gets into NXT. He definitely, I think, was the right one to win this. I know that on the finale, when the judges gave their opinions about, you know, what was good and what wasn't, I believe it was Bubba Ray, sorry, who was very vocal about how if Jasper Troy gets feedback that necessarily isn't the greatest, he's going to put on a sad face. And I think that was all from the episode with Gunther, but that was an early episode. And I don't think it was taken into account how he responded to that when he's received other feedback, though that is an important element. But I think, you know, by and large, the one thing that Shawn Michaels said that I thought was so important is who can fit on television right now. And I think that really informed all of those decisions. And so for Jasper Troy, one of the great points that was made by The Undertaker was you don't have anybody right now who matches up toe to toe with your champion, Obafemi. And you don't, you know, so nobody can look Obafemi in the eye right now and be that kind of challenger. They had to go get Moose from TNA to come anywhere close to that, you know? So I think Jasper offers a different kind of challenge to an Obafemi. And again, because there's only one Obafemi, there's only one Jasper Troy. So there aren't a lot of big guys. And to your point, big black men with chains, you know, kind of with a real dark feel to them is something that is not very regular or normal in pro wrestling right now. So he really did all of the things. He gave you something that you don't currently see on television. He had it nuanced in a way where you were like, oh, wait, no, I can't really compare him to this one because he's not like this person. He's a big guy, but he does this and he does that and he presents himself this way. So I thought he was the right choice, and I can't wait until we actually see him on NXT.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing for me as well, is especially on the final show from Sunday, is as he was getting ready to go to Madison Square Garden, he's packing his bags and his gear. He kind of gave us an insight as to the inspiration for his gear, you know, talking about the trousers kind of similar to Braun Strowman, you know, other stuff being similar to Kevin Nash, and then the jacket being, you know, inspired by Bray Wyatt. Now, I've just named 3 white wrestlers. Is it, do you see it as a problem or something to think about in terms of where his inspiration comes from, and not having the option almost to kind of take from, you know, other black wrestlers who may, you know, where we've not seen that type of, you know, persona and that type of gimmick and stuff like that? Or does it now give him an advantage going into NXT as a black wrestler with that type of aesthetic?
I think it gives him an advantage. What it does is it allows him to present an element of black culture that isn't seen in pro wrestling right now. You know, I mean, there are what most people associate with people of color is that, you know, we have the cool factor, you know, we listen to R&B, we listen to hip hop, you know, like they've painted that for us, not acknowledging the strong population that listens to metal, you know, that listens to rock, that has those influences, you know, where some people are like, you know, they want to go to see Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar, you know, others really want to go see Megadeth and that's and Metallica, right? Like it's a different thing for different people. Honestly, that's where we have Living Color. Right. And Living Color gets to do what they do, getting to perform at WrestleMania earlier this year. So I think it offers something different. And then if you look at the wrestlers he picked specifically, you can see those elements of them in his personality, you know, whether it is kind of the towering nature of a Kevin Nash, or, you know, the athletic nature of a Braun Strowman, or kind of that darkness that we would see from Bray Wyatt. So I think it gives us an opportunity to see black culture, another element and another nuance, another wave presented to show that we're not monolithic. You know, I would dare say that we would not have gotten those elements from a Troy Yearwood or from any of the others that were there. We would not have seen that. We would have seen something different, I'm sure. So I think this is a good scenario for him. And I mean, if you looked at, you know, you got to see his family and other things, all of those elements are consistent with that. You know, and so because they're consistent with that, it really showcased his personality. And I think that's a good thing.
And what's interesting, you mentioned, you know, how black wrestlers are usually portrayed, and I think look at all the competitors who are of any type of African descent. You know, you had Troy Yearwood, Chris Ireland,
yes,
you know, Tatiana Dumas, you had Anthony Luke, and Tyra Steele, who we're going to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, most of them. So you got Yearwood, Ireland, Steele, all sports.
Yes.
Athletic. We've seen it so many times
right.
on our TV. We've seen it so many times. Anthony Luke, you know, you compared him to The Rock, the whole cool factor and the attitude and whatever else. Dumas offered something different as well. Very different. In an alternative to most black women that we've seen on our TVs and stuff like that. Unfortunately, again, kind of green in terms of her, in terms of her experience, and didn't quite make it too far. But yeah, it's still very few and far between that we get to see someone who is different, a little alternative. It kind of reminds me of Kaden Carter. Who unfortunately was recently released, but we didn't really get to see. We saw this party side of her, but we didn't really get to see, the other side of her that is kind of, also into the, the metal stuff and all that kind of, and that side, all of that kind of thing as well. So very few and far between. So it's nice to see something different. Let's get into Tyra Steele. Tamira Mensah Stock.
Yes.
Her real name. Of course, very well known and put out there, an Olympic gold medalist. Quietly entered WWE at the same time as
Gable Steveson. You forgot
Steveson.
That fast. That's hilarious on so many levels. Wow.
Wow. Not on purpose.
Hilarious.
But it happened.
Holy cow. Hey.
Gable Steveson, of course, they both won Olympic gold medals, at the same Olympic Games. Right. But obviously, we had the fanfare that was, when it came to Gable Steveson. Both of them were presented. I believe it was the WrestleMania. Was it the WrestleMania or the SummerSlam?
I think it was a SummerSlam. Because it was right after the Olympics. Yeah.
So the SummerSlam, after they won, they were both presented. But then you never saw anything of Tamira Mensah Stock. Right. Even when she signed, no news, no nothing.
Didn't even know
unless you were doing research and following her page and kind of noticing that her photos were being taken in a similar background to some of the Performance Center folks.
Right.
And of course, we all know the story of what happened with Steveson. He's not there anymore. It didn't quite work out. But she stuck around and worked on her craft. I guess what helped her, it was in the background. It wasn't in front of everyone. Right. It wasn't magnified. And she got to do what she needed to do. She's gone all the way now and won her official contract to NXT. How did you find her run? We have seen her. We did see her debut on Level Up. I believe it was last year, but not seen much of her since then. This is the most exposure that she's had on TV or in the WWE. How did you find her journey in LFG?
I found it to be interesting. And I'll say interesting because she had a couple of legs up, I think, over the competition. For one, obviously she's the Olympic gold medalist, which that's going to hold a lot of weight. But to your point about Gable Steveson, so Kurt Angle was proof that being an Olympic gold medalist is a shoo-in. Mark Henry is proof that being an Olympian, that in itself opens doors for you. Gable Steveson probably had the greatest red carpet treatment that any Olympian's ever had, but then proved that the athleticism wasn't enough. So I think the challenge here for Tyra Steele was, okay, let's see what you can do. So she had the advantage of being an Olympic gold medalist, also the advantage of having been on television, and that being, of course, with Level Up. So she had a bit of an advantage over almost any of the other women in the competition. However, I think being on TV this much put her in a space where it could have worked to her disadvantage, because you got to see the areas that needed improvement. And so I think her journey was interesting. I think Booker T's comment in terms of feedback could have been the most honest, which is he hadn't seen that much growth and improvement from her, from where she started in the competition to where she ended. And so what I would say to that is, you know, this is just one of those spaces where you have a degree of advantage and you lean into it. I don't think she did so much that was wrong that would have taken her out. I think she was somebody who had to do something just egregious for her not to be considered to be in the final. I mean, she had to like cuss people out and, you know, break rules and do all kinds of craziness for them to go, nah, we're not going to have her here. With that said, she did what needed to be done to make it to the end. I would make the argument that it was probably a much closer competition between her and Zena Sterling than it was between Shiloh and Jasper Troy. I think so, because I think Zena kind of came from no wrestling experience and no wrestling background and showed a lot of heart, showed a lot of grit. But to again, Shawn Michaels' point, and there's no arguing here, who was most ready for TV. And I think the story of Tyra May Steele as an Olympic gold medalist writes itself.
Of course.
You know, you do not have a female Olympic gold medalist in the sport of pro wrestling. So that's easy. And that's not, and please don't misunderstand. That's not saying that she didn't earn this. No, she earned every bit of it. You know, what she did as an Olympic gold medalist earned plenty, right? But she also showed that she had what it took in the ring and what it took from a personality perspective for us to go, yeah, we could see her on our TVs tonight.
Very true. And I think what's crazy is with her journey as well. And I echoed the sentiments of Booker T as well, in the sense where we didn't see much of an improvement in terms of, you know, in that space of time from where she was to where she ended. But at the same time, she was so far ahead,
right,
that it's almost like she didn't have to. But the unfortunate part is, especially with this type of competition, is you're expected to see that growth. You're waiting to see that growth from people. So with her against Zena Sterling, it's like the polar opposite to where as soon as they introduced everyone that first week, you rolled your eyes at Zena Sterling. Straight away. You know, totally. Who is this woman? Totally. Oh my word. Oh, happy to be here. Blah, blah, all of that. By the end of it, you're like, yeah. I can see her as an NXT women's champion, or you know what I mean, on our screens every single week. And it was difficult to separate the two women in terms of who should win, who should not. And you know, with Tyra's journey as well, she kind of hit this spot where she kind of fell back a little bit. I believe her confidence was definitely knocked at one point, but she managed to find her way back. Undertaker did well in trying to find something about her that would stand out. That she had some kind of, not necessarily a story. The story writes itself, but it's kind of like making it work. What's that missing piece? What's that X factor that kind of makes the difference and makes her actually stand out in the ring and as a performer, makes you want to care. Basically, as we said, we've seen a Gable Steveson who's come in as an Olympic gold medalist. That was not enough. You know what I mean? That was not enough. Mark Henry was kind of similar in terms of being an Olympian, being kind of thrown in our faces, and it kind of didn't work out. He had to get sent to OVW to you know, do his training and whatnot, and then came back and did what he needed to do. And went through so many different iterations of characters and all the rest of it as well.
This is true.
So that's going to be interesting as well. But yeah, I think for me, you know, when it first started and you saw a Tyra May Steele and you knew who she was, you were like, okay, how does she not win? And I think that was you know, that was a bit of an Achilles heel at the start of it as well. The potential, there was so much put on her shoulders, and she had to, you know, I mean, endure that weight throughout the competition, and eventually ends out as a winner. They've now won their contracts. we're now expected to see them on NXT TV, within the coming weeks, possibly even tonight, possibly, something like that. It's crazy to think that the final happened at Roadblock. Roadblock was before Mania.
Correct.
So we're talking March.
Yes.
So it's been 4 months.
2 months.
3 months.
2 months since the end of it. Yeah.
2 or 3 months. That they've kind of had to wait in the wings kind of thing. We quietly saw Jasper Troy on the backstage segment.
Right.
I believe Chris Island and Charlotte Hill were in the Battle Royal the other day, a couple of weeks ago. But imagine doing Madison Square Garden. 5,000 people.
Yeah.
You're being coached and trained by Booker T, Bobby Ray, Mickey James, The Undertaker, being given your contract by Shawn Michaels, and then you have to wait 2 or 3 months before you actually make your statement that you've won. In terms of them going forward, what did you see? Let's kind of lightly fantasy book these two right now.
Sure.
How do they fit into this space? Yes, we mentioned Jasper Troy is as big as an Obafemi, but you don't throw him in front of an Obafemi straight away.
No.
So what do you do with a Jasper Troy? What do you do with a Tyra May Steele in their first few months or weeks in NXT?
I think Tyra May Steele gets to come in again as the Olympic gold medalist. I think she gets to come in so happy to have earned an NXT contract. And, I can see her thankful for all the judges and the coaches and all of those kinds of things. And then somewhere in there turning, where she's now the Olympic gold medalist who, I'm better than all of y'all. Of course I won. Of course I did this. Are you kidding me? When she cut that one promo against Danny Sikelski, I think, and she had the funniest line about, something about, well, you're behind. And then she looks behind her and she's like, but you don't have one. So here, go watch mine as I walk out. And I was like, oh my God. Like, so there's a brilliance to her that, I don't know who coached her on that. I don't know if she came up, but it was a brilliant line. And so it says she's got that edge, and she ended that by saying, I'm a heel. Nothing's off limits. I'm a heel. So to me, let her lean into that. Let her lean into that. And because, again, one of the things we don't have right now, certainly in the WWE universe, is the super angry, athletic Black woman. We've got Naomi, who just turned, but Naomi did that after 15 years, right? To see this Olympic gold medalist do this would be wild. And I mean, let her throw people around. Let her not realize her own strength. I mean, I think that particularly lets her cut through in an extremely crowded women's division in NXT. Honestly, I would go so far as to say it's going to be tougher for Tyra May Steele than it will be for Jasper Troy because of how, look at how dense that women's division is. I mean, Roxanne and Julia just obviously made their way to Raw and SmackDown. So you have two names that, aren't crowding that title picture, but you still have the core, and you still have, Jordan Grace, and you still have Jada Parker, and you still have, so many others, Lash Legend, and a ton of other names. So I think Tyra gets to find her way in there and figure out how that works. For Jasper, just let him come in and start destroying people. He's got to come in. Like, I don't think Jasper, I think Tyra is the one who should come in, just fresh out of LFG. For Jasper, let Jasper just randomly show up and start putting the boots to people. and then let Booker be the one. That's the monster. Like, let him run with that. The same way that Booker has been responsible for really helping the Trick Williams train get off, go on board. Let him do that same kind of thing. As a matter of fact, an even more brilliant move, let Booker T somehow get in some degree of trouble. Like, let somebody come and threaten Booker, and Jasper Troy is the one who comes and saves him. And Booker becomes Jasper's manager. We got a whole problem there because Booker will put that guy over the moon. Jasper doesn't have to say anything. Let just Jasper come in and just do all of Booker's dirty work. It would be brilliant. It'd be absolutely brilliant.
That would be phenomenal. Yeah, that would be phenomenal to see Booker T as the mouthpiece and him just going off on the mic all the time. Jasper just standing there, just looking evil and, menacing, ready to go. That would be phenomenal. I think with Tyra May as well, I think she should get a measure of immediate success.
Sure.
So that could be, we've got, the NXT Women's North American Championship now. So we could go in with that maybe. And like you said, her whole attitude of being, well, of course I won. Who else did you think was gonna win? I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I'm better than everyone here. I don't care how long you've been here, all that kind of stuff. I don't care what championships you've won, this, that.
Right.
You've not won an Olympic gold medal.
Exactly.
And run with that straight away. Whereas we've seen in the past with everyone else that we've mentioned who's been an Olympian or gold medalist, is they've kind of had that, but in a more of a comedic heel, maybe. And then we got to see the more serious side. And them kind of, becoming successful in that sense. But I think with her, it should just be straight in, no questions asked. Defeat a number of ladies, challenge for the NXT North American Women's Championship, win it at the first attempt, and then go from there. I think that would be amazing and a great way to kind of put her over. Her being a heel is perfect. We saw her start out as like a face, and she was kind of, the whole happy to be here. And everyone, all the coaches were saying, this doesn't work. Something's not right here. Then she did that heel turn, and then bam.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. This is what we want to see. This is what we were hoping for. So let's run with it. The final thing I'm going to ask about this is, we've talked about it over the last few weeks. It's been a topical conversation all year, if not longer, about the chances and opportunities of Black single stars, especially more specifically males, in the WWE on the main roster. But we talked, of course, about the multitude of stars that we have in NXT. We've now added 2 more. On a new show, what do you think this does, or should this be something that we should be encouraged by as Black wrestling fans?
Absolutely. I think here's the thing. Most of us don't necessarily like to watch the development of certain things. We just want it to, boom, appear. But getting to watch the development of it actually gives you great buy-in. It's one of the reasons we love Bianca Belair so much, because we watched Sam Roberts disrespect her in NXT. And we sat up and we stood up for her, and so because we stood up for her, he doesn't realize that that's the best thing he could have done, because he galvanized us without trying to. And so we wanted Bianca to be successful. So when she came up to the main roster, we automatically were pegging her as a women's champion. And it was just a matter of time. So I think if you look at all of these names coming from LFG, now in Evolve, NXT, there's a plethora of names that in the next 3 to 5 years will easily be main event stars. Easily. As a matter of fact, there's the real possibility that, much like what you're seeing in NXT with the wave of blackness that's happening, that's going to find its way, barring injury and any other craziness, into the main roster of Raw and SmackDown. And there will likely at some point be a discussion going, we don't have enough European champions. We don't have it. And somebody will be upset about that. As a matter of fact, I thought I saw a stat that said that right now, John Cena is the only only male champion in WWE that is not a person of color. And that's I mean, from Jey Uso to Dominic Mysterio to Ricky Saints, the New Day, the Street Profits. I mean, like, it's kind of wild when you think about that already being what we're seeing.
And don't forget El Grande Americano.
Oh, well, of course. The new speed champion. The speed champion. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's already happening, whether we realize it or not. It's already happening. Yeah.
And here's the thing, you know, we are here as we are as advocates of Black wrestling and people of color, or very specifically, you know, whether it be African American or African descent, Caribbean, whatever it is. But we also have to remember that we are not the only non-white.
Correct.
Sometimes we have to remember that, you know.
Yes.
So when we see a Damian Priest or you know winning the World Championship, the WWE Championship, you know, when we see a Jey Uso winning the championships as well, like, we have to also celebrate that to an extent. I'm not saying that we have, you know, we're gonna put it out on our whole social medias and blah blah, but at the same time, you know, diversity is there.
Yes,
the diversity is there. It's probably not specific to our, you know, our liking, but at the same time, it still gives us a confidence that our time in terms of what we want specifically is coming. I mean, we had it as well for a time. So it's nothing to say it's not going to happen again. With whether that be WWE, whether it be AEW, TNA, whatever it is, you know, we see our champions pop up every now and again and doing great things. Funnily enough, we've been talking about this whole thing of not having a black singles male wrestler on a PLE. That is about to, well, is it a PLE? It is actually, it is, but not one of the major ones. There's got to be an argument in there somewhere. There has to be, isn't there? There's always going to be some argument.
Of course.
But we can argue that this whole thing is going to end this Saturday at Saturday night's main event when John Cena puts his WWE championship.
Well, it's not a championship match. It's not a championship match.
Oh, is it not?
It's not.
I did not know that.
Yeah. No, it is not a championship match.
Okay. That ends all the argument. But
it's still, you know,
it will end. This whole talk of our people, our men, not being on the card of a PLE. Talk to me. This news of it not being a championship match kind of makes it even worse for me, in the sense of, you know, we talk about all this stuff and us not getting opportunities and things like that. R-Truth has ended up where he's ended up. The baffling thing for me is not so much this argument of the black wrestler and whatnot. It's not even that. It's more so how we got here. This is why I say it not being a championship match kind of makes it worse. Why are we doing this? How did we get here? It's not making sense to me. From the interaction at the post show scrum, whatever it's called, to us getting a match between the two of them, the interview that Truth had on SmackDown, like all of this stuff, like your mind works better than mine. Make it make sense for me, please.
You know, I think if anything, this is more of a dream match in a unique sense of the world, right? Like, you know, no, I don't know that people have sat up when they were thinking about matches that are must see and they went John Cena versus R-Truth. But I think the story of it is one of those things that you just love to see it, or you love to see them team together or something like that. So what I will say is I don't think there's been enough conversation around how we got to it from WWE specifically. So, if you think about the fact that you could argue that it was R-Truth that helped Cena win that match against Randy Orton, because when he ran in, he was about to get punted, which would have ended the whole thing. So then you turn around and he gets that move done to him through the table during the scrum. And then we hear nothing else of it. Like John Cena didn't even talk about R-Truth. And it's kind of like, huh? So I think they missed an opportunity in terms of the build to this, because I think the build could have made more sense. And there's an argument that could be made that the build alone makes it worthy of a title match. At this point, John Cena in a match during his farewell tour as the WWE champion that is not for a championship doesn't make sense. Because for John Cena, what's the point? Like, Cena could lose and it doesn't mean anything. Cena could win and it doesn't mean anything. Obviously, if R-Truth wins, you'd imagine that would mean he gets a title shot. But then there's the argument, R-Truth, who has not been on our television screens in an active wrestling match in months, why would he be in the championship picture? Only because of the name of John Cena. So I think they would have done a better job or they could have done a better job of getting us to it. With that said, Saturday night's main event is probably the safest place to put this, because I don't know that this match necessarily, puts up a buy rate for what we would consider to be PLEs.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Now, here's the flip side. The flip side is you could make the argument that there's probably going to be more people watching Saturday night's main event than a PLE anyway, because it's on NBC, a major network here in the States. So it's an interesting thing. This is definitely going to be more about the entertainment than the wrestling. It's going to be an interesting story. I think it's even more interesting that on this card, you have a steel cage match. You have a world title match, and I don't know where this John Cena R-Truth match actually fits. Like, because it's John Cena, you'd think it would be a main event, but it's not a main event. So I don't know. I suppose this is good to be able to check the box where we can say we no longer have the drought of single black males on a major event for WWE. The story is one that's universal. If you've been following R-Truth's career, I don't know. I mean, if we want to make a story of it, it's the 17-time history-making world champion against a 750-time 24/7 history-making champion. There you go. All right, there it is. History versus history. Something's got to give. This Saturday on Saturday night's main event.
I mean, there is a story to it. In terms of before we got to where we are, it would have been something that we would have asked for. It would have been on the list of matches that John Cena could have in his final run. We already know about R-Truth's whole, thing of John Cena being his favorite wrestler growing up, even though he's probably like 20, 30 years older than him. It's the greatest thing ever. So for them to have a match isn't a bad thing. As you said, unfortunately, the way it's been done kind of is disappointing, or a missed opportunity for me. It could have been a championship match. If it not be a championship match, why not do it on an episode of Raw or SmackDown, whichever one? It could have been done like that. If it's just for our entertainment, okay, maybe we're trying to make it a little bit more than what it is by putting it on Saturday night's main event, which is okay. But at the same time, if you're going to put it on that with John Cena holding the championship, why not it be a championship match? Now, here's the interesting thing for me. It may depend on where it is in the card, but I think and I don't kind of see this happening, but if it is the last match on the card, I feel as though it is a spoiler telling us that Cody Rhodes is coming back. I kind of feel like that's a strong possibility.
Okay.
If it's not, if it's in the middle of the card, it might just be Randy Orton coming back for his, for his revenge and whatnot. And that would make sense as well. So I feel as though that match is just for that. It's just for someone else to intervene, to attack John Cena, to get their comeuppance, their revenge, or whatever it is, or start their revenge on Cena and come back for the title. And that's the unfortunate part of all of this, because for me, given R-Truth's tenure, given R-Truth's popularity, even regardless of him not being in the ring as often, I still feel as though him having a championship match could have worked. It could have worked. And the craziest part is, as I said, I didn't know it wasn't a championship match. I really thought it was. And my whole thing was going to be that, I would love to see him actually beat John Cena.
Me too.
Win the title. Even if he held it for like 2 weeks, 2 days, whatever it is, like a 24/7 championship.
Sure. Sure.
Or if Cena finds a way to restart the match and wins it back, whatever it is, something crazy like that. I think it just would have made sense for something like that to happen. There is still a possibility that R-Truth does win and then gets to actually challenge for the championship. And that all that kind of stuff could still happen.
For sure.
But we'll see. It's still quite baffling as to why we're at where we're at with it all, but we are where we are. Hopefully, R-Truth. I think I'm just glad that R-Truth's in the space that he's at. But I really feel that it probably could have been more, but we are where we are. Speaking of opportunities, this one's a little bit different because this is the tide turning a little to what we're not used to. We're very used to, as we've just talked about Cena and R-Truth, we're very used to in the world of wrestling, the white champion or the white superstar being the one to give an opportunity or open a door for a black star to do their thing. This one seems strange, but very entertaining all at the same time and very compelling. I think that's the word I wanted to use. Compelling indeed. For the last maybe month or, well, probably closer to 2 months, we've seen MJF try and weasel his way into the Hurt Syndicate.
Yes.
It started off as an offer from MVP, of course. So it wasn't just MJF doing his thing, but it was an offer. MJF thought about it, came back, said, yes, I want to be in. But of course, in the spirit of democracy, it can't just be one man when it's a group of 3 making all the decisions. And it took a while for Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley to accept MJF as part of the Hurt Syndicate. We finally got that on last week's episode of Dynamite. The interesting part of all of this is MJF is he's young in age compared to the guys that are in there, less experienced, but at the same time, MJF is no slouch. He has been, the longest reigning AEW World Champion in its history. He is arguably one of their biggest stars of the company since it started, or has definitely risen to being in that great space as well. So for him to have to basically beg to be in this new faction of wrestlers who are new to the brand, the company, not the business in any way, shape, or form, but still. What is the dynamic here in your mind? Like, where does this go? How did we get here? And what can MJF bring to the Hurt Syndicate?
This is a highly unlikely and unpredictable kind of thing. I mean, when I say unpredictable, I mean, certainly did not think this was going to happen at the top of the year or when these guys came into the company. Didn't think that it would land here. obviously the last week or so, you kind of knew it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, MJF doesn't play well with others.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. To
Mm-hmm.
answer your question, what does he bring? You could argue he could bring the world title.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could bring the world title to the Hurt Syndicate. Then they'd have the world championship, the tag team championships, and they'd be, they'd be in a great space.
Mm.
But we know that this is not going to last. Nothing that MJF does in a partnership kind of space lasts.
Mm-hmm.
So what I am looking forward to, though, and this is a shame, I'm looking forward to how they're going to beat down MJF, because it's going to happen. And it'll probably be in one of those spaces where MJF is trying to turn MVP against the Hurt Business and Hurt Syndicate, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And they will overhear it. They'll be outside of a locker room or something, or they'll intercept some text messages or something, and they'll go, okay. And they'll play along. They'll be in a trios match, maybe even for the trios titles. And then they'll just kind of go, I think now's the time. And just put the boots to MJF. I think he will have earned that for sure. But what could he bring? I think he could bring the world title. I don't know if he's going to be the guy to take the title. I think it'll be Ospreay. Maybe he takes it from Ospreay, which could be interesting. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think we could get some comedic moments out of this, courtesy of MJF. Don't know how they're going to pull it off. But yeah, this is one of those moves that you didn't see coming. And I'm not fully sure that I'm completely sold on it. So I'm not, because I'm just not envisioning the space where they work together, and it seems like it makes sense. So I'm going to see how it plays out. AEW could fool me on this one, and I could go, oh, wow, this is what I've always needed and didn't know it.
Very true.
But what I do know is I'm looking for a beatdown.
I think from the second, we all know MJF doesn't play well with others. Mm-hmm. From the second MVP offered his card to MJF, we've all just been waiting for MJF to turn on the Hurt Syndicate, even before he's even part of it. Yeah. So it would be a nice twist that it actually happens the other way around, where they beat him down before he gets to do anything to them or turn on them in any way. What's interesting is how this is all going to play out. We kind of know already that there's a certain outcome. Someone's going to turn on someone. It's all going to fall apart in some way. Yeah. But it is how long do we keep it going in that space of time? How and what happens in that space of time? What are we heading towards, and how does it break down? And it feels as though it feels almost too predictable, but at the same time could so easily be that unpredictable that it doesn't work. Right. It's such a weird space for it all to be. And the other unfortunate part is, I think something that I mentioned about 2 or 3 weeks ago, is this whole thing with the World Championship, the AEW World Championship. Like there are so many people who are so close to or within that title picture, and MJ has been out of that for God knows how long. Yeah. And yes, he can still lay legitimate claim to it, but at the same time, he has to work towards it. It's not something that can happen immediately. So there is still going to be a space of time where he has to kind of prove himself or work his way back up to becoming a number one contender. Yeah. What happens with the Hurt Syndicate in that space? They could win the Trios Championships. Possible. They could. Do they lose the Tag Team Championships as well in that space? Who knows? There's so many things that could go right and could go wrong. Right. For the same reasons. It's such a space to be. It's a nice dynamic. When we saw MVP first come into AEW, handing out his cards and whatnot, at no point did anyone predict MJF would be one of these people. We said Ricochet, we said Samoa Joe, we said Mercedes Moné, so many other names. Not once did I ever hear anyone, even jokingly,
Right.
say MJF.
Right.
But they've made sense of it. I think the whole getting into it kind of probably took a little bit too long. But we are where we are, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how it happens. We're going to get comedic. We're going to get some comedy. It's MJF.
Yeah.
It's always going to happen. But I think for me, one scenario in my mind that could work as well is, eventually MJF probably does win the World Championship. And they've got it within the Hurt Syndicate. And that's when they turn and Bobby Lashley comes for that World Championship.
Yes.
For me, that's the conclusion that makes the most sense.
I agree.
In my mind. Or it be that Bobby Lashley might come very close to winning the championship, and it's MJF that prevents it from happening in some way. Out of jealousy. So we kind of we kind of feel as though we know what could happen with this, the outcome. How we get there and what happens in between is going to be interesting. Very interesting indeed. Moving away from that, unfortunately, we're kind of ending on a topic that is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. You brought it to my attention. It's been rife over the weekend. A company that you are very close to, have been working with for a couple of years now. A few of the female talent that have appeared for All Caribbean Wrestling, as well as a few male talents as well, actually, have been very outspoken over the internet, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, some on Instagram, very outspoken of their treatment. For most of the men, it's kind of, the narrative of waiting to be paid, still waiting to be paid for shows that they have done, and things of that nature. Unfortunately for the women, it kind of feels a little bit more hurtful. I don't know if that's the right word, but, their treatment with the man who is at the helm of All Caribbean Wrestling, kind of started the whole thing off, keeps the cogs turning, I guess. That man being JB Cool. We've seen in recent months that, the face has been Mark Henry, but we know that it's JB Cool that kind of, deals with all the logistics and whatnot. Unfortunately, names like Jada Stone, Amira Rose, Maya World has come out and said something. I believe announcer Amelia, have I said that right?
Eliana.
Eliana, so sorry. Eliana, have been outspoken about a number of incidents that have happened where JB Cool has been accused of being too hands-on, maybe too aggressive, making him feel uncomfortable, and stuff like that. There's so many things to mention. I can't be too specific on everything because I'd have to mention absolutely everything, and it would take quite a while to get through everything that has been mentioned. What you obviously you work doing commentary for the brand. What has been your take on everything that has happened? I'm sure there's certain things you probably can't say, won't say, whatever it is. But what can you say to this news of the treatment of these performers and wrestlers?
What I will say is I think that it is a terrible day when our colleagues feel unsafe in a work environment. Pro wrestling or anywhere else, you should never feel unsafe to go to work. That should just never happen. And when you think about the world of pro wrestling, people come, put their bodies on the line, day in, day out, travel, leave their family and friends, and deserve to feel safe. However you identify, whatever your space in life is, you should feel safe going to work. in any environment, if you sign on to do a job, you expect to be paid when you're promised to be paid. If that somehow changes, um, after you have actually done the work you've signed up to do, people are going to have issue with that. So I think this is just a really unfortunate, just a horrible situation. It's horrible. I want to be clear. There are certain things, when it comes to pro wrestling, you can disagree about a person's character, or you can disagree about a person's promo skills, a person's in-ring skills, whether you like them as a personality or not. But I think everybody, for the most part, is in alignment that there are certain things that are right and certain things that are wrong from a human decency perspective. And I think anytime, some of these stories, which, to be clear, some of the stories that I read are stories that I'm hearing these details on for the first time. And as I'm reading and hearing them, it just eats away at the core of who I am. I think it's a sad day in the world when people are more protective of a brand than they are the people who work for the brand. And so I have concerns. I have very real concerns. By the way, concerns that I've mentioned to members of the staff of this promotion. I have been vocal over these last few days about the things that I'm reading, the things that I'm seeing. And I think at the end of the day, everyone's going to have to make whatever decisions they make in regards to whether they'll continue with the company or not. But I think where things can get tragic is when things like this happen, it becomes extremely important for the company involved to say something, to do something. I think to myself, we have so many examples, certainly since 2020, of wrestling companies who have been vocal about certain behaviors not being tolerated in their company. And we can run through different wrestlers who have been accused of things and they were immediately released. Or, the company said, we're investigating this. Like there was a statement of some sort made. And, for those who believe that silence can't be misquoted, you're wrong. When you choose to be silent in a moment when you should be speaking, that silence speaks incredibly loud. You run the risk of the silence sounding like compliance and agreeance. And that's a problem. That's a real problem. I have, there was a situation that happened in another promotion that, I was vocal about when the situation happened. And, I understand that being vocal about these kinds of things can put you somewhat in, harm's way. Said that in air quotes. And that too is a problem. Right? If you cannot say this is right and this is wrong without the fear of potentially losing your job, something is wrong with that. Now, again, am I actively trying to criticize a brand or a company? Actively, no. But I do think that you have to be able to move past what's good for the brand. Well, actually, back up. What is good for the brand? What's good for the brand is taking care of your people.
Right.
That's what's good for the brand. And so the fact that as of right now, unless something has happened while we've been online, there's still not been a statement made by the company. That's not good. That's not good. And so what I will say is this. Number one, it is important for every pro wrestling organization to ensure that the people who work for you are working in a safe environment. And when I say safe, I mean an environment where they're not going to be harassed, an environment where they can feel comfortable, male and female, where, you know, you're not going to allow people to say derogatory things about them of any type. Like, it should be a no tolerance policy. And let me be very clear. It's possible for this to happen in wrestling. There are tons of wrestling promotions that don't have these kinds of things going on. Tons of them, you know. Every business, every brand has something, right? But it's not to this level and to this degree. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think that it's important that these companies really do take a stance to support the people who work for them. At the end of the day, if every wrestler decided to pull out of All Caribbean Wrestling, there'd be no All Caribbean Wrestling or any other promotion for that matter. So I think you have to work to take care of the people who have signed on to give literally their lives and their careers for the entertainment of the fans and for the forward movement of your brand. I'll also say this, that advocacy costs, okay? To be an advocate means that you're going to take your space of privilege and use it and lend it toward those who are disenfranchised. And so as a male, I have the opportunity to speak out for women who are disenfranchised, because women often in our business are considered the minority and not treated well. With that said, I think it becomes incredibly important that the company stands up and says something to protect women. Says something to take care of those who have not been paid that are supposed to be paid. At the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. And if there is a space where we feel uncomfortable saying what's right, then that tells you something is wrong. That tells you something is wrong. So I hope that this company that I have waved the flag for the better part of 2 years will do the right thing. And in my mind, there's only one right thing to do. They know what that is. And I hope that it will be important enough for them to do. Deciding to be quiet is not going to make this go away. This is too serious. The claims are too egregious. And I think, again, you know, if we're not going to handle this correctly, then other things need to happen. So I am, and I publicly say this, I'm disappointed in the way that this has been handled. And I hope that sooner than later, because it's already gone on too long, the fact that it's been almost a week since some of these allegations have been made and there's been no public statement from the company is just, it's unfortunate. And for all that this company has the ability to do to present this product to a portion of the world that is underserved in terms of pro wrestling, I love the concept. I love what the possibilities could be. I love being on television and all that. All that stuff is great. But I say, at what cost? Is it worth being silent while my brothers and sisters go through what many of them have gone through? Our integrity should never be up for sale. And so I hope that the company will figure out the right thing to do and do it quickly.
And for me, you know, what you just said now is the disappointing part for me, because the concept of, you know, this company, this promotion taking wrestling to the Caribbean, getting themselves to a point where it's not just live events, but it's also on Caribbean TV. You know, with so many people being able to watch this on a weekly basis, having live shows, even, you know, I'm sure it was presented to the wrestlers as well, with some of them kind of upcoming names and stars being able to, do something very different in terms of traveling to, different Caribbean islands. There are so many people who have been on the indie scene for how long and been successful on the indie scene and can't even say that they wrestled in Jamaica or they wrestled in the Caribbean and stuff like that. These opportunities that are just very different. Then you get a name and a face involved, like a Mark Henry. Then on top of that, you kind of get some connection to this new thing that is WWE ID. All these different things that kind of just make everything look so great and so brilliant and so fancy. As you said, the concept's great, but then boom, this happens. And the hardest part about it is this isn't just just a member of staff.
Right.
It's the man at the top. And that's the difficulty with something like this is if this was, one of the writing team, for example, or one of the wrestlers, for example, get rid of them, go, company carries on, we're good to go, whatever, we can replace them, whatnot. With this, it's a tougher space. Everyone in this world is replaceable. It's possible. When we first started hearing the stuff about Vince McMahon, and we were like, oh my gosh, WWE without Vince McMahon, what does that look like? We are where we are. It happens. The transition might be difficult. It might take a while, but we are where we are.
Yeah.
My question is, do you feel as though if we both know, and for the most part, I'm sure most people would know, the best thing to do is for JB Cool to leave the promotion. Does All Caribbean or can All Caribbean Wrestling continue without JB Cool?
I think anything is possible. I think again, with you mentioned Vince McMahon and WWE, and nobody in their wildest dreams actually thought that we would see Vince McMahon no longer in WWE. And but this is the day we're living in. And there's an argument that's could be made that WWE has been more successful, has had record-breaking numbers. You've got the deal on Netflix, you've got billions of dollars that are being tossed around without Vince McMahon in the picture. So I think anything's possible. I think, you put the right people in place. There are lots of people with ideas. And here's the thing. I think that I am for people getting an opportunity to try to right the wrongs. I think people had that opportunity if people are willing to do the work. If you're willing to do the work to right the wrong, so be it. But I do think that, of course, it can exist. I think anything can exist with the right people in place. And I think we may not know who those people are just yet, or maybe we do. I don't know. It's a decision that's above me. But what I can say is I think we have to be able to be open and honest enough to say, what's right, not just for the business, but what's right for the people. And all I know, and I made this statement to some people, is, you take specific names out, you add my name in, right? God forbid these kinds of allegations came up about me. Thankfully, they don't, because that's not how I roll. But if they did, I'd be gone faster than people could blink their eyes, because it doesn't matter how talented I am. If I'm going to be endangering people, and if I'm going to put people in a space where they don't feel safe, am I worth that much to the business that you're willing to say, hey, all of these wrestlers who feel unsafe, y'all keep feeling unsafe because Gerard's here? That doesn't even remotely sound right. So my hope is that, again, proper decisions will be made. And I think once the company makes its decision on what decisions will be made, we'll ultimately know what the future is. But I think, there's a lot on the line. And I think that's what's concerning. You've itemized so many things that have happened this year. It's been a huge year for this brand, a huge year. And it's like, do you risk it all? Somebody somewhere has to make this decision and has to think, okay, is it worth endangering all of this? And again, that decision's above my pay grade. But I think what it's doing is it's forcing a lot of people to make decisions that people didn't necessarily want to have to make.
And that's the unfortunate thing is, there's the possibility with it being a small promotion and still very much in its infancy, as much as it has achieved over the last few months or the last year, and gotten itself to a place where it's at. It's still a small company in a very big space, and they are serving a small number of people in a very big space. But at the same time, it's still so important in terms of the brand, the concept, what it's about, what it's been able to achieve, where it's at, the connections that it has. And as you said, is the company and anyone else who has any type of say or power or whatever else, are they really willing to let all of that go just to save someone's name? Or the other part of it is, are they that much in a space of also fear for their own livelihoods, their reputations, maybe their opportunities and whatnot, to where they feel they can't say anything? Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, this is how we got to where we are in terms of someone having this amount of power or influence, to where they feel they can do these things and get away with it. Do these things and still try and justify it. Do these things and still have others within the company or within the promotion say, oh, that's just how he is. And that is the issue here. We've seen it so many times in different spaces within wrestling. This type of thing happened before. But for me, the difficult part is when it has happened in smaller promotions or an indie promotion or whatever it is, that promotion just disappears altogether. But this one's different. And it's not because it serves Black people, but it's just different because it's serving a community of people that are, underserved within wrestling.
Yeah.
There was never wrestling shows in the Caribbean up until 2 years ago.
Right.
People didn't even consider going there to do anything. Now we are. Now we get TV deals. Now we get certain people involved. Now we get connections with WWE, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Someone needs to say something in order to save this promotion. And for me, that's what it is. It's not about saving the person. I don't care. It's not about saving the person whatsoever. It's about saving the promotion and the concept of the promotion. And that's way more important than anyone's reputation. And something needs to be said very quickly. I don't know if this question is something you can maybe even answer, but with the fact that no one said anything so far from the company, JB himself, I think he's only responded to something that Zicky Dice has kind of alleged in terms of not being paid or how he was treated. But who does say something? And because he is the most well-known face within this whole thing, does any kind of responsibility fall on a Mark Henry to say something if nothing's said for such a long time?
I don't know how they're going to handle that. I think, and again, we're out here now, right? I think there's an expectation with so many people now associating this brand with his name. I think there is likely a strong expectation for there to be some sort of statement made. I don't know what the plan is in terms of is there a statement? Will there be a statement made? What will said statement be? I don't know. What I can say is I don't think that it's wrong for an expectation to be made of someone of his stature who has ownership in the company to make a statement. Whether that statement is him personally or on behalf of the company. To a point that you made earlier, and I want this to be clear, because I love the vision of what the company has been trying to do, I think it has the potential to do something great, but it cannot do that in silence with this massive issue going on. Because you lose the support of the wrestling community, you lose the support of wrestling fans, and credibility gets shot. And so here's the thing: you can have the greatest concept in the world, but if people feel unsafe and people feel unvalued, doesn't matter the concept. I'm scared to say this, but it's gonna make sense, right? God, I can't believe this comparison's coming up. But Firefest was a great idea, right? The guy who had this concept, of these incredible stars showing up and all these people coming to a private island and paying all this money, like, it sounded great. But when the execution didn't happen, and when people flew there and they got ham sandwiches and they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the performers didn't show up, didn't matter how good the concept were. They were stranded on an island trying to figure out how to get back home. And so I think what's important is, no matter how great the concept is, if the execution doesn't happen, something's got to change. And so my hope for this company that, I have waved the flag for the last couple of years is that someone with decision-making power will make a statement to, at the very least, say where the company stands on this, and what the plan is for the future. Burying our heads in the sand doesn't make the problem go away at all. And even if it was just a statement that said, hey, we are aware of these allegations and we are investigating them and we will come back. That's all that really needed to be said.
Right.
But saying nothing, I don't know if there's an I don't know what's happening. I really don't. And I think that's what's unfortunate. There's not been communication to us. So don't know. Yeah.
It's a tough one. Similar to yourself, of course, you directly waved the flag. And even for myself, there are not a lot of things that I necessarily promote. Especially with with the indies and stuff like that. It's I've not necessarily been in the space of being on top of everything and what's going on as much as I have over the last few years. But All Caribbean was one of those ones that I was like, okay, let me help them fly their flag as well and whatnot. And again, so much for the concept. Worked with JB in the past with Fighting Evolution, was even very much promoted that promotion as well over the years. But stuff like this just kind of, puts this sour taste in your mouth that you just like, I was, to be truthful, I was associated with that. You know what I mean? There's been a point in time I was associated with that, and someone's going to recognize my association with that too. So I'm just like, we can't stay silent and say nothing about it at all.
Right.
And as you said, on to your point about what happens next. Unfortunately, if the concept's not right, if the machine isn't working properly, there may be a strong possibility of the machine not being there at all.
Yeah.
That's the saddest part.
And I will say this, I think, we are reminded that, WWE has dealt with its fair share of blows over time. But for one, they've had enough history and enough capital to weather these kinds of storms, all while still making some degree of a statement that says, hey, this is what works for us and this is what doesn't. There has to be the realization that while everybody wants to compete with a company like WWE, you have to realize that their pockets are longer, their history is longer, and they have the ability to rebound from moments like this because they don't turn a blind eye to it. They were all aware of what was going on with the Vince McMahon case. And, while they didn't talk about it on television, they made whatever statements they needed to make so that people were aware these are the things that we're doing. As a company who is not of that size, you cannot afford these kinds of strategic and tactical errors. You cannot. And honestly, every day that goes by without something being said, it's not good. It's not good. And they're going to have to figure something out, and quickly.
For sure. I definitely must say that, I feel sorry for everyone that has been treated unfairly, and especially more so the ladies who have been put in uncomfortable positions, been put in uncomfortable spaces, private messages that they received, being stranded in certain places, bookings being cancelled last minute, being told to, asked to do certain things that they weren't in the first. Like, there were just so many things, and I just feel sorry for some of these ladies. As we mentioned already, up and coming stars, and even one or two that I know or watched their growth from even before they even started wrestling school to where they are now, and things like that. So it's just difficult to see, difficult to read, difficult to hear, and it's just not right. And I really feel sorry for those
yeah, I'll make this statement because I'm not sure I've said a lot already, but I want to make sure I'm very, very clear that I stand very much with those who've expressed their stories. It is, reading those stories was tragic. It was tragic. I mean, you think about people who are traveling, and when you travel to another country, when you travel anywhere, you want to be careful. But when you travel to another country where you don't know the people, you don't know the environment, the last thing you want to be is potentially stranded by the people who brought you there. And that, that kind of behavior is just not good. It's not good. So, I've had a chance to talk to one or two of them. and I've expressed my support to them individually. But again, my support is with everybody who has dealt with these kinds of challenges, because that should not exist. This is not a world where you should feel unsafe, where people should be triggered in the ways that some have. And these are people who just wanted to come and wrestle and showcase their craft. You know, they didn't want these kinds of things to happen. And so I think it's and any attempts to try to poke holes in their story, to try to demonize them. You know, I will say this. It's probably not coincidental that all of these things are happening at the same time that a major celebrity is on trial for his treatment of women. You know, I think if we're not at a space where we can respect women and respect our commitments, then maybe there are other things that we should consider doing. If you don't have your word as your bond, all the promises in the world don't mean anything.
Right.
So let's create an environment where we do what we say we're going to do. If you're unable to do it, communicate that in enough time where people can make choices in terms of, do they want to take a booking? Do they not? Do they want to put themselves in this environment, or do they not? Because their safety at the end of the day is what is most important.
For sure. Gosh, I didn't want to end on this note, but this is where we are. Hopefully something will come out soon, a statement or something very soon from All Caribbean Wrestling, or anyone who has any type of say, power, or whatever it is within that promotion. Gosh, Gerard, tell the people where else they can find you. In the place of pro wrestling.
Yeah, you can find me at Bonnerfied on all of the socials. You can find me, of course, with Ashe Wrestling, AsheWrestling.com. Big show coming up June 28th, Return of the King. And we just found out more matches that are being signed, including matches for the Ashe Wrestling Women's Championship Tournament. Kiera Hogan versus Jocelyn Navarro. That ought to be a banger. So it's going to be some great wrestling happening at Ashe Wrestling. AsheWrestling.com is the website. And of course, if you can join us in Charlotte on June 28th, that'll be amazing. You can find me also at Southern Honor Wrestling on IWTV. You can also find me with the Nightmare Factory, also a WWE ID place, at the Nightmare Factory's YouTube page. Student Showcase 17 is available now. And for non-wrestling things, you can check me out the Bonnerfied Podcast Network. Some great conversations happening there. And again, follow me. Some cool things are getting ready to happen in the month of June. So be on the lookout for that at Bonnerfied.
Amazing stuff. And of course, guys, you can catch us here every single week on the BWA YouTube channel on a Tuesday, 6 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Eastern, I believe.
Yes.
Work it out wherever else you are in the world. You can also find me and Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, which is Black Wrestling Alliance. Simple as that. Guys, this has been our show, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Take care.